So I came to the conclusion that war is a quick fix. As violence is always a quick fix. When you can't really solve a problem intelligently, you turn to violence. And violence seems to solve something. Well, it's like a drug. And war is a drug. You win and you have a high. Don't ask me how I know this. But you win the war, there's a moment of exaltation. I remember when the war ended in Europe, and I was there in England, and the lights went on all over England, and we poured into the streets for the first time with the lights on in the city of Norwich, England, and they were passing out fish and chips to everybody free. It was great, all that exaltation. And then the reality sets in. And the reality after World War II was 50 million people had died, and we were still going through war after war. And so, yes, we have to decide once and for all, no matter how long it takes. And after all, the movement against slavery was a utopian movement in the 1830s. I mean, how are you going to abolish slavery? They're holding 4 million black people in slavery, and it's very useful to them. We're not going to be able to do this. But a movement grew. Slavery was not abolished just by the Emancipation Proclamation. A movement, an anti-slavery movement grew. It seemed utopian at the beginning, but it grew and grew and grew, and finally reached a point where Lincoln and Congress had to react to it, and slavery was abolished. It's possible. It's possible to end war. You can go through an experience, bad experience, bad experience, bad experience, and you begin to think, we can't stop this. We can only have bad experiences, and then a certain point is reached where something snaps, and you say, I'm not going to do this anymore. We have to do that with war. And it's, and we have to think about this. They cannot carry out wars without us. This is a very important thing. It's just like the workers in General Motors in the 1930s, when they faced the enormously powerful corporation, General Motors, and they were working under conditions which they didn't like, for wages which were too low and hours which were too long. He said, we're not going to be able to defeat General Motors, you see. And then they realized General Motors needs us. All we have to do is stop working, and General Motors is helpless. That's true of governance. When people decide that they are not going to support the government, when GIs decide that they are not going to continue fighting, when they come back from the war and they organize against the war, when the government simply cannot find enough people to carry on the war, then the war must come to an end. This is what happened in the Vietnam War. What happened in the Vietnam War is, and many of you remember this, that more and more and more people in the United States turned away from the government, and the government did not have legitimacy anymore, and it could not carry on the war when ROTC chapters closed, and when hundreds of thousands of young people refused to go to war, and when the GIs came back, and the GIs in the field were refusing to go out on patrol, and B-52 pilots were refusing to fly B-52s over Hanoi and Haiphong anymore. And then, and the Vietnam veterans came back, and they formed Vietnam Veterans Against the War, and they threw their medals over a fence in Washington, D.C., and at a certain point, the government decided, no, it will not be able to carry on the war. This is beginning to happen in the war in Iraq, and so the war at some point will come to an end. And it is up to us to decide that we are not going to support any war, whatever reason is given to us by whatever liars sit in the White House. We're not going to do that. Because if nothing else, aside from the horrors of war, for one very important reason, war and the expenditure of all of our energy and talent and national wealth for war is preventing us from solving the problems that we have in the world, the really serious problems that we have in the world, the sickness and homelessness, and the lack of water in the world, and what's happening to the environment, and how do we deal with natural disasters like Katrina and what happened in Asia when the earthquakes come. These are things that are affecting huge numbers of people, billions of people, and we're not able to deal with that because the governments are fixed on war. So that's one very important reason for abolishing war, because it is possible to imagine a world without war. It's possible to imagine a world in which this very talented human race, we are very talented. You know how talented, amazing things are done by human beings. We turn our talents to creating a world where everybody has health care and everybody is housed and the air is cleaned up and the waters are cleaned up. It's possible to do that, you see. And so we will start modestly here in this church. Thank you.